call the meeting to order. Mike, can you please call roll?
Ms. Pinecki.
Present.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Dressler.
Here.
Ms. Crooked.
Here.
Ms. Hope.
Here.
Ms. Hobertle.
Here.
Ms. Hollingworth.
Here.
Ms. Paoli.
Here.
Mr. Seidel.
Would you please rise to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mike, could you please read the statement concerning open public meetings?
Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 12, 2022, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. The written notice was submitted and filed with the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were emailed to the Courier Post and the Retrospect newspaper.
Thank you. We'll start with presentations. We're going to be moving B up to the front. So the Haddonfield School District coaches for level 1 status of NFHS School Honor Roll.
Thank you.
Mr. Bennett?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. We received this fancy banner, which we're going to display proudly in our entrance to the gymnasium. The NFHS is the organization that governs all the state high school athletic associations. And in addition to creating all the rules and supervising high school athletics in all states, they also have a professional development program for all the coaches. And we have been very active in that professional development, and some courses are required by the New Jersey State Athletic Association to coach in New Jersey. Through funds raised through the online booster clothing apparel sales that we've done over the years, I was able to raise some funds and cover the cost of some additional courses that I asked our coaches voluntarily to take to reach the status of being recognized nationally as a level 1 school. In order to achieve the level 1 certification and the national accreditation by the National Federation of Schools, 90% of our high school coaches had to take 4 additional courses. 1, protecting students from abuse, sudden cardiac arrest, concussion, and the $100 course on fundamentals of coaching. Our coaches at the high school voluntarily took all the courses and helped our school meet that certification. And I just wanted to take a moment and publicly recognize them and appreciate all the work and commitment towards professional development every year, and just have the board acknowledge them for their hard work and dedication. That's it.
Thank you.
Great job by Mr. Banners organizing this, but also those of you who've had kids involved in athletics here understand the quality and the commitment of our coaches to our student athletes. And Mr. Banners says it over and over again, it really is an extension of our curriculum. Right? We call it extracurricular because that's the reason why. And I think the professional development involved in this really echoes the way we want our teachers to grow professionally and our coaches as well. So excellent job, Mr. Banners, and congratulations to all your coaches.
Thank you so much.
Okay, for next, we're going to do some HET teacher grants. So we have the HET here.
I guess I'll face this way. So we're one of the better kept secrets in town, for who doesn't know it. We're the Haddonfield Educational Trust, and we give out most of the scholarships at the end of the year for the senior dinner. And during the year, we pitch in through the school year in a big way with teacher grants. The teachers submit their requests to our group. We have a blind system we use to go through them with help from Chuck and everybody else. And this year we gave away 7 grants, so I forgot, to 7 different teachers across most of the schools for a total of $12,814. Some of them are already happening. I actually got to join one today that was with Miss Dixon Hughes over at the the Academy of Music, thank you, for a show that we're doing, and there's some really neat stuff coming. There's a bell jar, there's a new printer, there's a new computer. That's all I got off the top of my head. We're very,
Support the memoir project.
The
was
memoir
successful.
project.
yes, the memoir
Well,
project.
Yes.
And a lot of these are extra projects that we really couldn't do because they're not built into our regular budget. So the fact that the HET is able to support our teachers in this way is, really, we're really grateful. And it's a regular, we do this every year, so it's really.
Every year.
And we gladly accept donations as well.
We do.
It's how we get our money is by fundraising, and obviously in the last couple of years, we haven't been able to do as much, so.
Yeah.
We're always making the pitch to get to the Haddonfield Educational Trust website.
Everybody watching at home and everybody in the audience, this is only possible because of all of you who come to the golf fundraiser, and we got a lot of surprise checks during COVID. We spent an extra $20,000 on Bluetooth wireless headsets for every teacher in the district so our kids could still learn. So we do sometimes have the capacity to really step up on demand, but our budget is not everlasting. So that was a big year for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then I'll get some later.
Thank
Good enough? Thank you.
Okay, next we are going on to Ms. Horowitz and Dr. Murray, or Dr. Horowitz and Dr. Murray for the Start Strong assessment results.
Thank you, and good evening. Gina, can you put it up on the screen, and if anyone can't see the screen or make out the information on the screen, I have hard copies here. And please excuse my back. We were mandated to administer the Start Strong assessment in September since the NJSLA, the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment, was canceled last spring, and our New Jersey Department of Education was mandated to administer one statewide standardized assessment in 2021. All districts in the state had to administer the Start Strong, whether they felt it was needed or not. And also because not every district can afford the diagnostic assessment tools like we have. The Start Strong closely resembles the NJSLA testing in English, language arts, mathematics, and science, but is shorter in length and provides information on who needs strong support, some support, or less support in each of the subjects tested. The purpose of the Start Strong is to identify students who need different levels of support at the start of the school year. The assessment measures the skills learned and retained from the previous school year. For example, current 4th grade students in September were assessed on grade 3 content. The secondary purpose of the Start Strong was to provide parents with this readiness information so that they could engage in dialogue with their child's teacher, although parents did not receive their child's official results from the state until December. Fortunately, our teachers had immediate access to results and reached out to parents as needed. We have not administered the Start Strong in the past, but instead, we rely on Lincoln's Form C benchmark for prior year achievement and Lincoln's Form A benchmark to provide teachers with a readiness snapshot for learning current grade level content. With the detailed analysis of specific skills and sub-skills, Teachers have been and are well informed of their students' readiness and capabilities. The results of the Start Strong provides a look back on content learned in the previous year and retained over the summer, but does not give us information on achieved state learning standards. The Form A benchmark gives us the same information on who needs support and provides standard mastery levels. Correlations can be found when comparing the Start Strong and the Linkit Benchmark C form, which we administer in the spring, making Start Strong somewhat of a duplicate effort. The results of this fall's administration of the Start Strong indicate overall that our teachers and Dr. Colleen Murray did an outstanding job of delivering and teaching our curriculum despite the challenges of illness, remote, then hybrid instruction, and just a few short months of in-person teaching and learning last year. Add to that the decline in retention that normally occurs over the summer months. One would expect that our returning students would not fare as well as they did. We performed best in English language arts. On page 2, you can see that the vast majority of students demonstrated that they needed less support at the start of the year. Comparatively, the percentages of students who needed strong or some support was low. The graph reflects what one would hope to see when measuring skills in September, even after a normal school year. On page 3, one can see that we did not perform as well in mathematics compared to our performance in ELA. However, when we looked at the scores in Form A, also administered in September, we did a bit better in math than what Start Strong indicated. Additionally, the percentage of students who were identified as needing strong support was not that much higher than that in ELA, except in one course. Page 4 shows the students in the 3 grades who took the science assessment held their own as well, with low percentages of students needing stronger support. Had all students taken the science assessment, perhaps the percentages of students who needed stronger support would have been lower. A breakdown by grade level, school, race, gender, and support services can be found in the full report posted to the agenda. Data was removed from the chart when necessary to protect the identity of a very small subgroup of students. The last 2 slides show how we performed when compared to other D, F, G, and J districts. In ELA, we matched the average percentages of D, F, G, and J. Our math and science scores were within range, but indicate we had more students who needed strong and some support, and we had a little less of our top performers in the needing less support group. Once you're able to delve into the full report, please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. Any questions with this abridged version of the report?
I am curious because we've spent so much time working on the mathematics and the algebra 1. Like every year we try to improve it. Do you guys have an idea of what might have caused the challenges in the scores those years, this year? And if not, can you go look into it and come back?
We actually did go up. It's a negligible increase, but it's across the board 1% from years past on our link it to link it. So, we are seeing improvements. Some of the more noticeable improvements are at spots that were typically like low, where you had maybe 17 points behind. Now we're like 6 points behind. So, we are making progress and it's steady. it might not look like it on here. I kind of think it does. Like if you look at our scores, we are scoring better than we have in the past when we stack up against J districts. Typically, we're always a little bit lower than the J districts, but to be completely even with them right now in ELA and just a little bit behind in math it's an improvement.
Heather, if you're talking about the high school,
I'm talking about slide 3, algebra 1,
At
the
the high
red
school.
bar, yes.
that's,
Yeah.
that, if you consider that the way our students track for mathematics, that's our lowest group of math students, right? So the middle school, where you see that they're 55 need less support, that's the typical track for our math students. So the fact that the high school and in middle school algebra are separated out doesn't look, it looks at it. That's the only place where we're looking at kids in different track levels. Right, so if you're just an algebra, I would probably take a look at algebra as a whole and see how we did as a district, as opposed to separating high school and middle school. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm not sure I'm
I do, I just, I know the very advanced students are in geometry or even higher at that point, but I still feel that there's some students that aren't completely struggling to take algebra 1 as freshmen.
Yeah, I would be interested, just especially as we're doing the math committee now, to be looking at how can we better support those algebra 1 high school students. 62% is a high amount, even if you're, math isn't your like favorite. And I know because I have kids from both ones that I'm not a fan of math. So, but how can we, in rethinking what our math committee and our math curriculum, how can we better support those students where math might not be their interest or coming as easy to them as some students? I think it's something to look at.
I do think it's interesting to see the all grade math, because then I think it kind of absorbs that tracking that you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of see that it's a similar kind of trajectory for the grade.
I know that not everybody took the science, so I know we're looking at a smaller pool of numbers, but I don't think that, those numbers are actually surprising to me. I think that they're not even as strong as what we're seeing with math, and know that there are some problems with math. Any ideas why science would be performing like that?
It's a little bit similar to what Chuck was just talking about, where kids are advancing faster through the courses than a typical high school. We have a lot of kids that are achieving at really high levels, so then it kind of skews the results for standardized material like
Do
this.
we know what the content of the science was? It's general science, right? So
It was,
our ninth graders taking biology, it was not a biology-based test, was it? It was a general science test?
it was general science across the board, but I can look more closely at it.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because that doesn't seem to fit.
How, I need to touch on this just generally. How does this testing compare to Linkit? Like, are the results similar? Because when we look at the breakdown of the school, we're seeing a very positive thing compared to what we've seen traditionally for many years. We're seeing a more even distribution of performance among all 3 elementary schools. We're seeing some schools that, haven't been as strong outperforming. So
It's very
is the test a good test, or is it, how would you compare it to the Linkit results? Are they showing the same results?
It's very consistent. The main difference that Sandy pointed out is that Start Strong is it's not really, it doesn't give us any standards granular information. So the results are very consistent across the board, but when they take the Linkit, the teachers can find out exactly which standards to target right away. With the Start Strong, it's more like, these are the kids you're going to want to pay more attention to type of thing. So it's just so much more broad with the Start Strong. whereas Lincoln's just so much more actionable, like immediately actionable, if that makes sense.
You mentioned, Sandy, that teachers had access to this early in the year. I mean, I know as parents, we didn't receive it till December and January. Teachers had access to this early, so were they identifying kids
Yes.
that they thought needed extra support?
Yes.
Yeah, and they also used it to try to help with the scope and sequence. One of the things that we've been dabbling with is the idea of power standards, focus standards, and to try to accelerate learning so that we're not getting stuck in the weeds of review on lots of little, things that aren't quite, endurance standards that they need every year or leverage standards that will help them in other classes. So this was one of the benefits of the Start Strong, is that it did help teachers to think about which standards do I really need to focus on if I want to bring all of those kids along and not get stuck in review mode where the kids that are farther ahead would be completely bored.
Also, the Start Strong was a much shorter assessment, and I'm sure that the state does its due diligence in proving validity. But it could be that because of the limited number of questions that were on each assessment, it really didn't give our kids an opportunity to show what they know. I mean, that's one possibility. With the NJSLA, there's many more questions and more opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Klaus is going to report on our long-range facilities planning timeline.
Coming to the microphone because I was at the wrestling match last night and screaming a lot and my voice is gone. If I sit up there, no one will be able to hear me. So, but quickly go through where we are with our long-range facility planning. In essence, what is our long-range facility plan? What's the purpose of it? It really provides us a way to look at a large scope, provide consistent planning for education facilities, see where our needs are, make sure that we're able to properly service our students and population, and look at all of our facilities and make sure they match our goals, districts, and objectives. And when I spoke last month, I talked about how we have a lot of spaces in our buildings for adults to operate operational. And if we want to be a really student-centered group where we're going to do project-based learning, we have to convert or find new spaces that are designed for that. This library is a really good example in that 5-10 years ago, the circulation desk was almost half the library, and all of those rooms were offices for adults. Now we've minimized the circulation desk. Those rooms are for student use. So it's a way of taking current space and refigure it to be more student-centered. That's something we have to look at across the district, how we can maximize that philosophy. Quickly, what it enables us to do, it enables us to organize, talk to the community about our future educational needs, and that's a key component. We're going to hear this throughout this whole process. That this is not just the school board and the superintendent and principals figuring this stuff out. We really have to be about the community, and what the community sees as educationally important as well. It will help us estimate our pupil population. That's really, if you've been paying attention, it's really a big deal for us right now, and that our population has grown. Our high schools, over 100 students larger than it was 5 years ago. Central Elementary is filled in grade 1, and we do have some developing going on, as we know, in the very, very near future, as Bancroft is being torn down just in a few weeks. It helps us appraise the quality and capacity of our existing facilities to see where we need to grow, where we need to improve. It helps us make decisions about new facilities potentially, coordinate school and community planning, and really prioritize things. Here's the timeline. So we're looking at potentially going to a bond referendum, and that bond vote would be in September of 2023. So that's about 15, 18 months from now. And we're actually a little behind on this, a month or so. So get to a bond referendum in September. Really, we started talking about this in January, about what potential referendum might look like. In March, We'll be looking at financial planning and what bond council, to see what they have to say about where it could go. And then from March through June, this will be a bulk of our spring, gathering stakeholders' voice. That's the Board of Education, administration, staff, students, and the community. In May, we'll select and award a contract to construction manager. In June, after we got all the information from all these parties, we'll start to look at the scope of work. What'll happen is our architecture firm, Land, will get all the work done and put a grand scope out, knowing that we won't be able to accomplish that, and that'll be too large. And then we'll go through, after these community talks and work with our stakeholders, and pare it down to what we feel is a realistic, crucial vision of the scope of work. And that's going to be a 6 to 8 month project. And by September, we'll have that scope of work finalized. Excuse me. We'll then submit it to the DOE. We'll have public information meetings to talk about the vote, how its benefits are, county board of elections, and then once again, in September of 23, look for a referendum vote. Here's what our outreach plan is right now. We've already started doing this. So ongoing, central office, we've created a long-range facility planning committee, the board. We've been meeting. We've met with the architect, the superintendent, business administrator, the facility director. We've also met with the architect to talk about some of the things we believe are important. We've had individual meetings with all of our departmental leaders and building leaders, the district, and whole team meetings. Starting in March, the administration will meet with the HEA representatives and the architect to talk about what the teachers feel, the staff feel they need. Building level administrators will meet with representatives from their schools, and the architect will moderate charrettes at each building. So each building will have their own chance to sit with the architect, all the staff, have a discussion about what they feel they need, what they feel needs to be improved, what's missing, what's working well, all those things to get that input. In a similar fashion, in April, we'll be going out to the community, PTA meetings, surveys in community, and the architect, once again, meeting with community members, families, and parents, and charrettes in each building, hearing the voices from what the community feels is important in our educational group. Going back to this, we went back to the first slide. It's the school and the community working together, right? This is not the school district putting this out. We have to have this all as a vision for all of us. Students in March and April. Here's some of the activities we're going to be looking at with students, because I've been talking about student-centered and student-driven ideals, right? Places for students to learn, instructional areas for students so the students can get what they need. Students are important in this, and it's not just going to happen to them, it has to happen with them. So this actual picture, this is from Land, our architect company. When they were doing the Voorhees Kindergarten Center, Land actually met with middle school students and went over design possibilities and incorporated some of the ideas from middle school students in the design of the kindergarten center, the kindergarten center of Voorhees. Similar type of thing. And these are some of the ways we're going to look to try to get to student groups. We have our student group, our student voice group, student council alike, building whole town hall meetings. One of the things we're looking at there is vision boards. So we can go to our littler guys, have them take old catalogs, pull pictures from the internet, cut them out, and make a board in each of the schools where they put up what they want their school to look like, what they think a school should feel like. And that way we'll get an idea of them, not just from essays and talking, but what they see as important for school, what they want their schools to look like. So we'll take all that information and put that all together. Scope of the work, it's going to be a daunting task, but this is what we're going to do, right? We'll start off with our capital forecasting tool. That's called Dude Solutions. That's a running record of everything we have. We record all of our capital maintenance needs, all the light bulbs, all of the facilities management is all in there. So we'll pull out from there what needs to be done on a very practical level. We're going to take the 2016 at a bond referendum that they started off at $100 million, something to that effect. It was pared down to $35 million. There's things that were talked about then in 2016 that were left over. So we're going to start with that as part of our planning too. Then taking all the input from those current groups with the architect, he'll develop a scope of work that we think is reasonable. It'll start off very big, like we said, $400 million, pare it down or whatever it's going to be. I don't know those numbers. was to sort of launch and pare it down based on conversation with all the stakeholders. And then on February 24th, I'm going to present with Ron Swanky, who's our architect from Land Associates, and talk not about the specifics of the bond referendum, but kind of try to talk about the vision of what we think is important for our kids to have in school, right? When I talk about student-centered spaces and student instructional spaces for students, talk about what that looks like in a real modern school type of situation. You know, the classroom of 30 kids sitting in classes is what a lot of people think of in schools. This is a way to show kind of, but I'm probably not articulating it well enough, what that looks like, because they've done a lot of projects like this. So that's where we're headed with the bond referendum. It says September 23 feels like a long way away, but this is going to be on our table every single day for the next 15, 18 months. Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, let's go on to committee reports. Curriculum committee, I have none, we're meeting next week. Finance and facilities, Dave isn't here, but I don't think you met, right?
Next.
Next. Policy committee.
Yes. So, the committee met this morning, primarily to discuss the 11 policies and regulations on the agenda for this month for first reading. We had the help today of Mr. Vanos, Ms. Behringer, and Ms. Soros, Dr. Murray, Dr. Henderson, and Ms. McHale. So I just wanted to thank them for their input on these policies.
Excuse me, but we're having a hard time understanding you in the back.
Okay, sorry. So we discussed two revised mandatory policies regarding surveys, assessments, and analysis. Policy 2415-05 is regarding surveys that are funded in whole or in part by the U.S. Department of Education. For those, we must get written parental consent if a psychological exam, test, or treatment has the purpose of revealing certain information, such as political affiliations, religious affiliations, and income levels. The second was policy 9560, which addresses state rules, and it allows districts to administer anonymous voluntary surveys or assessments regarding student health only if prior notice is given to parents. We don't need signed written consent on those, but parents have an option to opt out if they feel that's appropriate. We discussed a policy and regulation regarding sports-related concussions and head injuries. This is a mandatory revised policy. It was rewritten to address statutory revisions, which expanded the scope of the law to include intramural sports, along with interscholastic sports and cheerleading programs. The policy also extends to middle school students as well as high school students. We discussed an adult high school policy, which is mandated and revised. We in Haddonfield do not have an adult high school, but it is required for us to have it on the books. It's mostly terminology changes and an additional section regarding individuals with disabilities. We discussed a mandatory new regulation regarding additional or compensatory special education and related services. It's based on a statutory revision made in response to COVID, and it provides a year of additional or compensatory special ed students to students with disabilities beyond the age of 21. We discussed a policy and regulation regarding student assessment. The policy was revised. The regulation is new and both are mandatory. Will now be implementing an approved English language proficiency assessment for English language learners with an IEP to measure students' progress in English language proficiency, so they can have a separate test. There were two policies that were updated simply because the term freeholder has been changed to commissioner, and that's 3233 regarding political activities and 7540 regarding the joint use of facilities. We discussed policy 5460 regarding high school graduation. This is another mandatory policy that was revised. The revisions just provide greater clarity regarding graduation assessment requirements for the classes of 2023, 2024, and 2025. And there's a new optional section that we have decided to opt into which allows graduating seniors to receive a New Jersey Department of Education issued certificate and transcript notation indicating the receipt of the state seal of biliteracy if they demonstrate proficiency in English and in one or more world languages. There is a mandatory new policy regarding anti-hazing. It was developed in response to the Timothy Piazza law that was passed in August 2021. It will go into effect March 2022, and it requires public and non-public high schools and middle schools to adopt an anti-hazing policy. At this point, unless we have additional guidance from the Department of Education, we will really be following our current code of conduct procedures for any anti-hazing incidents. Finally, there is a mandatory revised policy and regulation regarding bias crimes and bias-related acts. Gender identity or expression and national origin have been added to the protected class of individuals, and school property has been revised to school grounds. Also expands some reporting provisions and requires all bias-related incidents to be reported to local law enforcement and the county prosecutor. Then we reviewed some existing policies, and we are carrying over a few to discuss again next month. Those are school and facility names, needless public labeling of students with disabilities, and honoring student achievement.
Any questions for Lynn? Okay, LRFP?
Yes, everything was chopped.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I mean, just to reiterate, I think that the really great thing that as we're talking about the LRFP is that it is not talking about leaky roofs and windows that don't open. We're very much talking about what the students need and the focus on being student-centric, and Chuck just made that very, very clear. I love that is the focus. And then the other thing is getting the complete involvement of community, of faculty, of teachers, of students. I'm excited about this process.
Anyone for PTA updates?
Meeting next Wednesday is
Okay.
essential.
I actually went to the Tatum PTA, which was, I don't know, fun. I was going to say fun. I don't know if that's the word, but it was great. It was informational. They have a lot of great things going on. They're planning for their fall fair, which is May 7th. It's going to be in the evening, which avoids that conflict with sports. They were discussing a possible new fundraiser next year. They do a booster-thon. One School, One Book, the book fair, which is coming up on February 28th. They have some fun family activities. They're having a family bowling night, an adult-only social, and a multicultural night. So a lot of great things going on. A really good reminder of all of the work that goes into making our school community, especially when you talk about the elementary level and that high engagement of the parents. So that was fun. Okay, moving on to Dr. Leola.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. I drew the straw to talk about the masks tonight, so I welcome everybody here. It's an exciting opportunity that we're at the place I think that we're at. I want to kind of share where we are with everybody, and I'm okay. I'll speak loudly. So here's the first thing to note. So the governor made his announcement on Monday. One would like to think that prior to the government's announcement, we would have received some news, some pre-information. That did not happen. So I probably heard at the same time everybody else in this room did. The good news is that we as a district, we have a pandemic response team that consists of our medical staff, our district leadership, and also our school district physician. We meet once a week. And about 2 weeks ago, we started talking about this topic in anticipation that this might be coming down the pipe. So the details of it are that the governor's universal mask mandate ends on March 7th. it is then put into the control of local school districts to make their own decisions. One key piece of information we are still missing is updated guidance from the New Jersey Department of Health. So all throughout this pandemic, for the past 2.5 years, we have most always followed the guidance from the New Jersey Department of Health. So our guidance has not been finalized yet until we have a chance to review that. And one thing I want to make clear, we have not always been lockstep with the New Jersey Department of Health guidance. There have been two critical junctures where we did not follow that guidance. The first being when we returned, when we eliminated the cohort teaching back in the spring. And we didn't follow the guidance of 6 feet. We went to 3 feet despite the county's recommendation, but we didn't do so recklessly. We had very good data that we were collecting over the time on our rate of transmission in our buildings, and we believe that that decision was the best for the students in Haddonfield. The second time was when we did not adhere to the 14-day quarantine recommendation, when we went from, where did we go from? When we went from yellow to orange about 2 months ago. Now, in both of those circumstances, we wound up having a bit of clairvoyance because eventually the county did rescind and align their recommendations to what we implemented based on local information. So our goal is to have a formal plan and recommendation communicated to the community within the next 2 weeks. I can say we are committed to responsible normalcy to the greatest extent possible. We understand the variety of implications and balancing the health precautions with the mental health of our students and our staff. And I think it's also an important point to make that, I don't know if this will resonate with anybody, but we get a lot of emails and a lot of calls. And why do we get that? Because our parents are passionate, compassionate, and they love their students, and they want what's best for them. Almost every district leader here in Haddonfield has school-aged children. So not only do we deal with this issue professionally, but we also deal with this as parents. So I say that to know that we do understand and empathize with what a lot of people are going through. I have a first grader. I have 4 children. 3 of them are school age. My first grader doesn't know what it's like to be in school without a mask. I personally am not happy about that. But as a school leader, I have to make sure we're making decisions collectively that's in the best interest of students, best interest of our staff, and also be able to back up those decisions that we make with good rationale. And we've done that for the past 2 years. We're going to continue to do that in every facet of what we do. So this mask mandate is no exception. But even though it doesn't end until March 7th, we aim within the next 2 weeks, perhaps sooner, to announce how we will respond to that. And it's also important to note that it's not as clear cut as masks on or masks off, because we do have to consider contact tracing. We have to consider how we're fashioning our lunches. We have to consider the impact on student grouping. And we want to be able to provide the rationale and explain, even if people don't agree with it, what we're doing and why we're doing it. Any questions of the board?
I think you touched on mine, but mine was just how that policy is going to address the close contact rules,
Yeah.
whether people are going to have to quarantine, whether that depends on vaccination status. I mean, there are those things I think are top of mind.
Can you just, it was a valid question. I'd love to hear his answer. You're allowed to talk later. Let us have our meeting, and then you can have public comment.
Yeah, we're taking all those things into consideration. And that's part of the reason why we're waiting the Department of Health.
Mental health is more important than the COVID.
Exactly. Any other questions?
Is there suffering with
And
pressure?
Mr. Klaus is doing, oh,
I would like to say one thing. I understand that people are very concerned about mental health, and that is something that is very dearly important to me as someone who lost a dear friend to suicide in 2018, in 3 years. So please don't misunderstand that anyone's concern here ignores mental health. Mental health is certainly top of mind. So.
Because you can't get a psychiatrist.
It's not a back and forth. It's not a back and forth. We need to tell them to stop shouting. I hear what they say, but they just have to wait. I want the form.
You can't get an appointment.
And I'll be able to hear you in the microphone, so I'm going to the microphone.
Can you hear the microphone out there?
Sure, I hear you.
Yeah, I think that, does that only go to the video or I need to?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay.
Can
you hook the microphone and hold it and walk out?
I will.
This is the speaker.
I'll try to make this quick because my throat's going and you have time for public comments. Could you hear me before? Okay, you hear me now? All right, thank you. I'm going to try to make this quick because we have our public comments coming up. My report for today. Few things we have on the 22nd. We have our board training, which is something we're looking forward to. We were supposed to have it last week, but it did get snowed out, so we haven't been able to redo that. Email responses. I'm putting out there. I try to respond to every email I get from families and parents. I've gotten many of them over the last few days. I have not gotten back to everyone yet. I will get back to people, but it's going to take me a little time. So I want to apologize if I have not responded to you yet, but I will be sure to get back to everyone who emailed me. I have an entire folder full of emails that I have to get to. I hope you understand that. What you may know, you probably should know, we had a false alarm for our new security system at Central Middle School yesterday. What's that? So what happened with that alarm was, well,
It's over?
no, it's not. I'm going to give my report and public comment means you guys can come up and then talk.
So our board meetings are actually, we are meeting, and then we have time for open public comment, but it's not a back and forth. Just so you know, so when we meet, it's more.
I'm sorry to explain that.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean,
I'm sorry to explain that. I assume people understood, so you'll have your chance to talk. That's why I was trying to go quickly through this. Yesterday, we had a false alarm of our new lockdown system at the middle school, the Central Middle. In essence, what happened, I put out a brief notice yesterday. The system was under test mode for training. We believed it was inactive. Someone was working with the system and set it off. Because it was in test mode, there were things we could not access in it. We had to get the company to shut it down. It was not a good thing. It was frightening for the children, for the staff. We are sad about that, but we have addressed that issue so that we'll not have any other schools, and we'll be able to get the students acclimated and everyone properly trained in the system. Here are our COVID numbers. Currently, we have 4 active cases in the school district, which is excellent. That's the best it's been in a long time. And just as a comparison, roughly a month ago, this is where we were. So all these things we're saying are positive things that make us feel encouraged about the future and where we're going. Our Cali score, we are still in orange, but we are trending toward yellow, which is a key factor for a lot of our decisions we've been making over the time. You can see, once again, we had that spike with the recent Omicron, but that is back on its way down. If the trend continues this way, I would expect by the time this time next week, realize these numbers are they were released on Saturday for the week. So by the time they're released on this Saturday, the 12th, as we track it, we will probably be in yellow as well. There's our numbers for what those mean. And this is our year-to-year tracking, seeing 2021 and 22 in red. We've had 654 cases so far this year. In 2020, 21, we've had 141. Questions or comments from the board?
okay, Okay, I will keep my president's report very brief. I really just want to say thank you all for coming out. I know that, we all know that it's a really heated issue. We appreciate your taking time out of your schedule to come. We are interested to hear what you have to say. And do know, as Dr. Priola was saying, we have kids too, so we're not unfamiliar with the things that you're saying. We totally hear you and we empathize with you. And I know there's a lot of layers and we've all been through an awful 2 years. Just know that, and I know that it doesn't appear this way, I feel like, but we're not your enemy. We really do. We have kids too. We've seen them struggle. We have, dealt with a lot of our own personal issues as we all have. So we're eager to hear what you have to say, but just please keep in mind we're in a very similar situation to you. Okay, for open public comment, we'll now begin the open public comment session. Members of the community are invited to speak for no more than 3 minutes at this time. Skip that part. If your 3 minutes is up, we invite you to get back in line to make additional comments. This is an opportunity for the board to listen but not debate issues and enter in question and answer period. Please be aware that not all issues brought up before a board meeting will be resolved that evening. We ask you to state your name and the name of your street so that a designee can get back to you with a response if warranted. General responses to comments will be posted on the Board of Ed website under the Resources tab where it says Open Public Comment Replies. While public education can be an emotional issue, we strive to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Public meetings are recorded and televised, and students often participate in the meetings. As such, citizens are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. So at this time, please, you can come at the podium when you want to.
Probably. Thanks, girl.
Yeah, please remember, state your name and your street.
Hi, my name is Jessica Downey. I live on.
Is it turned on?
Do you want me to repeat my name?
Go ahead, just so we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Jessica Downey. I live on Gladstone Avenue. My son is in first grade as well, Dr. Viola, and I'm sure you share my concerns about his well-being, and so does all the board. But I just wanted to make sure you guys understood what my concerns were, and now that we have the option and we are not mandated by the governor to make these decisions, I really implore you to consider these concerns that our young children are facing. My son has not been to school without a mask on. He thankfully is a very social and happy child. He has made a ton of friends since we've moved here, and I'm very happy for that. But it kills me every day for him to tell me he doesn't want to put on a mask to go into class. When he comes home and he tells me he can't hear his teacher because she started wearing an N95 mask. And he can't hear her pronounce the words that he's trying to learn to read. It makes me cry. He just wants to play with his friends in class without the mask on. And I know people say the kids aren't bothered by the mask, and that might be true. I don't know everyone's child. I know my child, and my child is bothered by the mask. He comes home, he's a very loud child, and he comes home and his voice is hoarse from making sure everyone can hear him all day, because he does a lot. His teacher always tells me he talks a lot, which is good. He likes being involved in class discussions, but I'm worried every night when he comes home, because you can't hear him at night anymore because he's been talking too much throughout the day. I'm worried about his lack of empathy skills. I've read a lot about this, and when he can't see how what he says and how they affect other kids in his class because his classmates have masks on. And I know this isn't, my younger daughter isn't school aged yet, but I really worry for her because she hasn't seen children without masks on to develop these social skills. I was very concerned about my children's medical well-being, and I got my children vaccinated. And I chose that because I believed that was what was best for my kids. And I believed that getting them vaccinated would give the board and the ability to not have to wear masks anymore. And when I checked the list at my child's at Haddon, Lizzie Haddon, it's at almost 80% of children are vaccinated. Parents have the choice to vaccinate their children, and I chose that for mine, so he wouldn't have to wear a mask. And I implore you that at this time, we're not going to convince anyone else who doesn't, who has that right as their parent, and that's not going to change by law. At least I don't foresee that in the future, to do it. So there's not going to be a bigger percentile. We're not going to see it get to 100%. And we have to come to a time, when is it safe to lift them? And it's safe now. That's my own belief. And I think that I should have that. I know what's best for my son. And I think I should be able to send him to school without a mask on every day because I've done what I've done to protect him. And I believe it's in his best interest socially, for his mental health, for his reading development, to not have a mask on. So I'm asking you to allow me to send my son to school every day without a mask on and make that choice, just as another parent who feels differently can decide to send their child with a mask on. And I think the school can do what they can in teaching. If there's any concerns with the disparity, I think Haddonfield is very, very well versed on teaching diversity and that.
Sorry. Yeah, your 3 minutes is up. Welcome to get back in, and I feel terrible being like, but so I'm gonna put my hand up, so if you kindly give you the 3-minute warning for everyone's sake, so everyone gets an opportunity to speak, because I wanna make sure everyone gets a fair chance, but I also feel awful doing it, so I'm just gonna wait.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Kendall Herkner. I live on Roberts Avenue, and I am a sophomore at HMHS. I thought I would just present a student's viewpoint on the topic of the masks. So I can't speak for like everyone on behalf of every student, but I feel I can advocate for those who feel as I do. For students, we only get about 45 minutes each day to take our masks off, and that's at lunch out of a 7-hour days. Teachers have the opportunities to take off their masks on free periods or in the teacher's lounge, but we don't get that. I know for myself that I go to the bathroom sometimes just to take a mask break if I'm overheating in class or it's just, I feel a little stuffy. My parents tell me it's my choice if I want to wear a mask or not, and I believe everyone has that choice. So I'm not saying that everyone should just not wear masks. It's your decision. But I think that COVID isn't going away, and it's time to take a new approach on how to deal with this situation.
Hi, my name is Chris Means. I live at 7 Roberts Avenue. Throughout the last 2 years, I've never seen it asserted from any side of this issue that masks are helpful for the social, emotional, or educational development of our children. There are, however, many who believe that masks are harmful to children's development. Whether they are harmful and to what extent, I don't pretend to know. But it is reasonable to assert that from a social, emotional, and/or educationally developmental perspective, there is no upside and only downside to the masks. So why should we continue forcing our children to wear the masks at this point? The argument in favor would be to stop the spread of COVID. But when the masks were first mandated, it was to stop the spread of the original strain, which was followed by the Delta variant, both of which could be significantly more severe than the currently predominant strain, Omicron. Even including deaths from the original strain and the Delta variant, the survival rate for children aged 0 to 19 has been over 99.9%. Concerning teachers, the survival rate for adults in their 50s is over 99.7%, and that only improves for younger teachers. The masks were implemented when we didn't have the clinical knowledge and the therapeutic options that we have today to treat it. They were implemented before we had 3 vaccine options, which are an option for those who want to use those vaccines to protect themselves against the effects of the virus. I know that the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten, has suggested that we mandate masks in school until, quote, spread is low enough so that there is no dissemination or transmission in schools, end quote. No dissemination or transmission in schools? We may never reach that point. Just like we'll never reach that point at which there's no transmission of cold or flu in the schools. We're transitioning now from a pandemic to an endemic, and like colds and flu, we're going to have to live with this. So it's now about personal responsibility. I'm not asking the board to say that nobody may wear a mask. I'm just asking that they don't say that anybody must wear a mask. If parents want to mask their children because they believe that's what's best for their children, then they should have the right to do so. If teachers want to mask themselves, then they have that option as well. Let me cite Governor Murphy's own words in his announcement ending the mandate. He stated that, given the continued drop in new cases and hospitalizations, projections indicating a continued declining over the coming weeks, and the continued growth of vaccinations for our school-age population, we believe that we can reasonably end the universal mask mandate. He further cited the lower severity of the Omicron variant as a reason to end the mandate. As of this morning, the district's COVID dashboard reported that there are currently only 4 COVID positive students in the district and 0 COVID positive staff. 80% of students are fully vaccinated and boosted, as are 71% of staff. So unless Haddonfield begins experiencing a massive spike in cases, and those cases are much more severe than what we've been seeing, there can be no justification for continuing this mandate in our district. And I ask the board to consider this in your deliberations. Thank you.
How you all doing? Bob Little, Marion Avenue. Some of you may know me. I've sat where you sat a couple of years back when we were doing construction on the schools, and we took a beating from the parents. So, and I sat there and I took it. So you're gonna have to sit there and take it tonight. I'm a little passionate, so I'm not gonna speak for my words. I'm gonna speak for my wife, who is much more eloquent than I am. There are studies and more studies about all aspects of COVID. I am certain many are not unbiased and based purely on quote unquote the science. But with a bit of common sense and critical thinking applied, I believe a rational person can come to some understanding as to the meaning of the data, the measuring results from across the globe, when looking at the efficacy of the many different strategies in attempting to mitigate the spread and deaths of COVID. These facts are now available to help us determine what strategies work and what do not. What cannot be doubted are many reliable studies that clearly demonstrate the serious harms imposed on our children as a result of many of these strategies. Now that the COVID tsunami seems to be ending, and there are many extremely effective preventative vitamin protocols, effective medicines, therapies, monoclonal antibody treatments that should be available to everyone, it is clear to me that the harms of continued mandated face masking of our children is no longer acceptable or reasonable. I understand that other parents and teachers and staff will certainly have different opinions on this topic. I respect those opinions and respect that they wish to continue to mask or not. Notwithstanding, it should be an individual's decision, the parent's decision at this moment in time, especially with our clearer understanding of COVID thanks to the research, results, and studies available at this moment in history. I have attached a link and a QR code to the website that have compiled and summarized research and studies. While it's certainly a large volume of information to digest, I urge you to skim down the list, read some of the surveys, and maybe even click on and read an article or two. I realize this email is a touch lengthy, and seriously, thank you for your time if you arrived at this final paragraph. I've been passionate in my advocacy, and I urge you to please let the students go back to normal and be able to smile at others and possibly even get a smile back in return that is long overdue. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Ann Campo, West End Avenue. I'm going to be brief, a little blunt. I'm a parent of a senior student. I've also had 2 students graduate already from high school. All have been here K-12. It's the first time I have ever spoken for the school board. First time I felt compelled enough to even show up to a meeting. The last 2 years have been devastating in many ways for all of us. I couldn't help but notice that at some point over the last 24 months, the goals of our district somehow seem to shift away from our students. And the administration has become cogs in the public health mitigation campaign effort. Regular emails seem to focus an enormous amount of energy doing volumes of data, charts, and metrics on COVID health and safety, and relatively none on academic accomplishments of our student body. It is no surprise that an increasing number of Haddonfield parents, young parents in our district, have taken to social media expressing pride and excitement to be in a district and town with such high vaccination rates and on occasion low case counts. It seems as if the primary goal of our premier school district shifted overnight to showcase our progress at being among the very best at implementing these mandates and public health COVID mitigation measures. On a personal level, I saw changes as well. In 2020, my special ed students' education went from being a priority in the district when it was determined in September that he received 4 days of four half days versus the 2 half-day cohorts that the regular ed students were to receive. But in 2021, in September, this changed because he was unvaccinated. Instead, the district made choices based on that criteria, and it was determined that virtual learning was perfectly acceptable for him, and virtual learning is not acceptable for him. He suffered learning losses, and he missed school. He was contact traced multiple times, and he stayed home. And it was very detrimental to his education. He was perfectly healthy and not a risk to anybody. I recall that it was only a few years ago that the metrics such as average SAT scores, college acceptances, and graduation rates were important goals for our district, but it seems no more. I'm reminded of a saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And it seems like hell is surely not far around that bend if this district continues in the path of prioritizing the virus and public health measures over educating our children. In an effort to keep Haddonfield a top-notch school district, relies upon our administrators and Board of Education making proper decisions when offered the chance to do so. I think lifting the mask mandate would be an important step, and I hope that you do that. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Rob Danino. I live on Marion Avenue. And I'm not going to talk about the health aspects of the virus. I'm not a doctor by any means. But I try to approach every decision I make for me and my family from a reasonable perspective. And I think one thing we need to think about when we talk about masks is that somehow along the way it invoked a tribalistic feeling in humans that we now have either a mask side or a non-mask side. And I think that if you think that hasn't affected any of you, I think we got to dig deep and think about that. Because is that making our decisions when we try to base on reason? And I'll say that, you know, when you walk the streets, if you see that when the kids come out of school, they rip the masks off. I understand that everybody wants their kids to be healthy, and it's totally understandable, but it's almost, you're almost incapable of really trying to measure where they're going to have the virus and where it's exposed to it. My wife's a teacher. She's a first grade teacher, not in this district, but she comes home, she has headaches because of wearing the mask. We know that nonverbal behavior is a huge percentage of communication, especially with these small kids like the woman that spoke yesterday. And it's just I just think at this point, I'd like to communicate this to the board that we need to follow Governor Murphy's recommendation. He was very pro-mask. And now he's come back and said, hey, you know what, it should be up to the decision. I agree. I feel that, if you want to wear a mask, no harm, please do. But I think it's time to really look and give these kids the choice and the teachers as well.
Sorry, I know you've already listened to me once, but there was one important point I wanted to make and I didn't get to do that. I beg you to please send out a parent survey because I don't want to. Before you make this decision, you need to hear it from every parent, not just those who can come here today. It was a huge sacrifice for me to get here today. I have 3 very small children who I'm their primary caregiver that puts them to bed. And I've never been apart from my baby. And I came here today because I really think that this is the number one concern I have for my children that are home right now. Hopefully my husband is able to get them to bed. So I'm asking you to allow all parents to answer a survey before you as the board make your decision. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Tina DeVita. I live on Jefferson Avenue. I don't mean to be controversial, but social media is very tricky. And I know a lot of you. I know that where you go, I see what I think is frustrating as a parent is my kids have sent me through their friends photos of teachers not wearing the mask in the school. And they say they're told by their teachers to wear the mask, but they don't. And I get it, they don't want to. I mean, a lot of teachers don't want to, so I would love for you to get a survey on them as well. But social media is funny because all of you are at parties, games, inside at events with 30, 40, 50 people, no mask. And it's just, we're tired of it because it's like hypocritical. Like, it's just, we're all done. So I guess my question to you is, with a raise of a hand, are you guys for the mask to be taken off, or can you not answer me? Could you email that to me if I can't ask questions?
We can answer you, and a lot of times the decisions we make aren't what I personally would. This won't be a vote, whereas in the board will vote.
Okay, how does it work then? Like, how does a decision come to whether the mask is
yeah, but
do you have to email that to me? I mean, it'll
come the recommendation from the superintendent.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, my point is all of you are out and about without the mask on in parties, and everybody that's probably going to take a vote on this is the same way, because we're all human. We're over it. We just walk out the door, we go home, we're around everybody, people drop it. We're all putting masks on, but if we were at a restaurant right now, we'd have to have them off. So I say.
How you doing? I'm a resident here in town. So you said that the superintendent makes the decision?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Oh, Ryan, sorry, Regina. So the superintendent makes the decision?
The superintendent will make a recommendation to the board, yes.
Where are you leaning to right now?
First off, yeah, it's not a back and forth. It's not a public
Okay,
conversation.
I was just curious. I was just curious.
One point though, because he said this earlier in his superintendent's report, and I feel like the public missed it. He said that they're gonna debate over the next 2 weeks, taking in a lot of sources of information.
Got it.
So if they wanna think about it, they don't wanna
Yeah.
make a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, I'm not, I literally just walked in like 5 minutes ago. Like, my wife texted me saying, hey, there's a meeting tonight, so I just walked in. I wasn't trying to be cute or anything like that. So anyway, all right, so me personally, it's been 2 years, right? And I think everyone in this room, or most people in this room, when we started, it was, hey, all right, let's hunker down, let's wash our groceries, let's wash our kids' hands and the bottom of their feet and all that stuff. And then, by the middle of the end of 2020, it was like, all right, and it got somewhat like political, somehow, some way. And I don't think anyone in here would deny that the people who are here would want any ill will or any harm to their kids or to our kids. It's really a function of what's best for our kids. And I know that none of you in here who were here when the pandemic started wished that you would be here when the pandemic started. Like, that's like, heck no, I wouldn't sign up for that. For those of you who came on after the fact, bless your heart. Like, that is, you guys all deserve medals for that. But for me personally, I look at it as, when does it end?
Yeah.
Like, when do we stop? Let's just say that this pandemic, that the variants continue to go up, down, up, down. Are you prepared to keep these kids in masks for perpetuity?
Like, what's the end game?
Like, are we gonna have our grandkids up here or our kids up here having these same conversations with the next generation? Like, are we? Everyone in this room, I think, has lost somebody to this pandemic. Whether they're the immediate family or distant family or a family or a friend, and no one would marginalize that. There could be someone that lost a brother, a father, a sister, and no one is marginalizing that. That's every death is tragic. And we could have people come up here from one side and another side talk about statistics and manipulate those statistics however they want you to hear them. And to me, that's just not pragmatic. How long will this go on for? How long will we let our kids run around in these schools like this? Look at us. Look at us right now. I have a mask on. Like, I know half of you out here. When we walk out of these walls, we don't have masks on. We walk into restaurants, we don't have masks on. And look, I know it's not your it's not your decision. I get it.
Start wrapping up. Sorry, there's a 3-minute.
What's that?
There's a 3-minute limit.
Okay.
So but I know you weren't here in the beginning.
Am I at 3 minutes right now?
You're a little over, but again.
All right. So look, I just want us to just let's think about where we're going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. Is it going to be like this forever? All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Hi, Monica Harris, Chestnut Street. This is my first time up here at one of these meetings. I've called many a times during the pandemic. I'm sure all of you definitely remember something I've said. But on all the policies that the governor has issued, really, like the main policies since the beginning of the pandemic, no one on this board has really gone against it. We've always followed it. He said virtual, we go virtual. You get your kids vaccinated, we open up the clinic. You do that, we've done it all, okay? Now he finally said, we get a break. It's up to the district. We have a choice. Oh my goodness. Why is this even a thing? Look at how many people have come out. This is the most amount of people I've actually ever seen in this room when I've come to one of these meetings. And I feel like it's finally come where everybody has had enough. My second point, this is not mask related, but it is something I want to bring up. The book that was handed out to the elementary school, there was no warning, no heads up on the topic that this book discusses. I don't understand why the district thought this book was appropriate for children, especially like my son in first grade. On top of that, there was no form sent home, no piece of paper saying, hey, this book has been sent out. Here are questions that you can ask your child at each chapter. Some of the issues in this book, I personally am not comfortable with talking about my child with. It brings up anxiety, other issues that, especially having gone through COVID, already in a mask, already isolating his fears, worried about asking his teacher for a break, all these other things, right? Why wasn't there anything, any warning? Hey, just so you know, parents, these are the topics this book, discusses. Here are ways we're going to bridge it in class. So I do want an answer on who approved this book, who thought it was appropriate for this age group, because I don't.
And if it is being discussed in class, I want to know specifically what points are being discussed in class, so that way I can discuss those things with my child separately in our home. Thank you. I'm sorry.
The name of the book.
Stella Diaz has something to say. Yeah, so I mean, I can understand for older age level and some of the topics that this book discusses, but one of the main issues that I found was in one chapter, it discusses a lot of anxiety and fear, talking to a friend about feelings that she had felt and this idea of not belonging. And again, I can understand how at a certain age point, those topics are relatable in school. But for example, my 6-year-old son who loves sports, who basically, like someone had mentioned, only knows being in a mask with COVID in terms of school. It just further kind of like that's what we're teaching our kids, like to worry about anxiety and fear. I feel like we should be highlighting play sports or hang out with your friends down by the park. There's so many other positive life lessons in a book that could have been addressed during this critical time. And I just don't think it's appropriate to have an anxiety-ridden book about someone who doesn't feel like they quite belong right now at age 6. So thank you.
I'm Jennifer Cartella, and I live on Walnut Street. And I just want to piggyback off of her point with this one book, one school. I think I met with Miss Murphy Dr. Murphy about this, and regarding to some concerns about the books and how they're chosen. I have strong beliefs that a preschool or first grader are on different reading levels, different topics than a 5th grader. And we're not reading Anne of Green Gables or Charlotte's Web. We're reading books that have some charged adult content or older kid content where it wouldn't be appropriate for a first grader. So that will be a different time, a different meeting, but I will be here at these school board meetings, I'm sure a lot. I have 4 kids and they're young. My oldest is in 2nd grade, and he comes home upset with these masks. I've never instilled fear in my child regarding COVID. Psychologically, I've always told him he would be okay. I protected him in a way that I could. They're children. They don't understand. When we incite anxiety on our children, what are we doing to them in the future? I'm an occupational therapist. I work with kids with special needs. These kids are being ignored by their districts. They're forced to wear a mask, and the only reason these kids can read social expressions are from looking at someone's face. A child with autism has trouble enough trying to read emotions from their peers, let alone their educators. These kids with special needs are being ignored. And half the time, they're not even wearing masks appropriately. I'm worried about them. And as educators, I don't have to tell you how important it is for young preschool, 1st grade, 2nd grade children to be able to read emotions from an adult. When you're looking at eyes, you can't tell whether I'm smiling or whether I'm frowning. That's my biggest concern. I'm trying to speak for kids who don't have voices. Kids with special needs do not have voices, and we need to be their voices.
Good evening. My name is Bill Police. I live on Lafayette Avenue. First, I want to thank you all for serving. Unpaid and often was appreciated. I certainly do appreciate your time and all the time, the effort you're putting into helping us. I'm here to say that I'm on board with everyone who's spoken so far. I know that there's basically 3 groups of people. You got the kids, you have teachers, and then you have the people who are afraid to make a decision that's going to be unpopular or make them look bad for your next job or whatever. It just seems there's way too much inertia on protecting the status quo, which right now is the mask. And I believe in my heart, as most people have eloquently stated, we're well past the point of diminishing returns with the mask. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Hello, my name's Mike Alberico. I live on Hopkins Avenue. I don't even have kids in the school system yet, so this is so my son is about to be in kindergarten, and my son's school, I have 3 little ones, follow the guidance of what the public school does, so it actually directly impacts them. They are wearing masks. What concerned me today was listening to the pre-speeches by the board, and the question is going to be raised and is, let's say the mask mandate is lifted. I hope that's what happens. I'm not sure what the justification would be to keep it moving forward, at least now. My concern is, and if it could be answered, what's the metrics on if we're going to go back to this? Is it going to be come October, we see an increase in cases and all right, we're going to go back to masks again? Is it going to be a bright line rule? We're looking for a bright line rule. I know we all are, that it's over. We're done with it. No matter what happens, that we're done with the masks and we want to be done with them in perpetuity. And it's not going to be this wishy-washy back and forth. And if it is going to be wishy-washy, it needs to be a concrete metric on when we're going back into masks. So that's my comment.
Okay. First of all, I'm not trying to keep the masks on indefinitely. I agree that masks at some point are going to need to come off. My concern is right now that kids under 5 still cannot receive.
Could you give us your name and your street?
I'm sorry, Melissa, and I'm on Mansfield Avenue. My main concern is the fact that under 5 are not yet eligible for a vaccine, and that's my biggest concern. I don't think it's fair that.
It's not a discussion with her. Give her a moment to speak. You had yours. Go ahead.
I don't think it's fair that under 5, if you're going to school and you have a younger sibling at home, that you could potentially expose them. And I think it would be better to delay it until we have the vaccine eligible for everybody. I think that's my biggest concern. Obviously, we still have lots of cases. It's not over. Omicron is just getting under control. And what I'd like to see is just a delay. Let's see what happens after Easter break. Hopefully the cases will continue to come down. There'll be better control and we can see what life looks like when we're not dealing with a bunch of cases continuously. I don't want to see my son wearing a mask forever either, but I think right now it is the safest way for this time. And that's the biggest issue. I think there's some ways we could fix it. Possibly in the future, run a campaign that if they're vaccinated, they can drop the mask. That might be some way of doing it that will also get us potentially up to 90 or 100% in all the schools. I think there's a way of getting us mask free, but safely. And my concern is that the abruptness of doing this just so quickly. With Delta, we had a very similar situation where the governor removed the masks, and then we all know what happened with what happened. They went into stores, everybody took off their mask, and we were all having lockdowns. And I don't want to see our children ending up virtual again. And I think keeping the mask on, it's going to keep them where they're not spreading it. If somebody does have a contact, it'll keep everybody in the classroom for now. That's basically it. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Shannon Cornetti. I live on South Hinchman. I came tonight. I'm new. My kids just started the school district this year. I have a third grader and a sixth grader. I've never been to school board meeting before, and I wanted to see how it goes and this issue. I'm a public health person. I'm someone who actually gets paid to do public health, which I know you all don't, and I just want to say thank you for jumping into this field that you didn't choose, and I know it's been really hard. I thought I'm not a pro-masker or an anti. I'm not an anti-masker, but like, who likes masks, right? Nobody. I don't like masks. My kids don't particularly like them, although my third grader does say it keeps her nose warm on the cold winter days on the walk to school. But I'm actually glad I came because I have a lot of compassion for the issues that many people have spoken about. And I do care about social emotional learning, and I do care about kids with special needs, understanding people, and I don't want to be wearing masks forever. But at the same time, being a public health person, I also have compassion for folks who have immunocompromised family members and kids who are not able to be vaccinated. And I do think that it makes sense to tie the masking to some public health guidelines that hopefully, I don't quite share the optimism that it's over, but I'm hopeful. I want to be there with you with the optimism that it's over. As of 2 weeks ago, we just had our largest surge of the last 2 years, and the hospitals were overwhelmed. A pandemic is not an endemic when the hospitals are still being completely crushed, so we're not there yet, but I'm hopeful that we will get there.
Give her time, please.
Yeah, and I listen quietly when everyone else got up to the mic, and it's really not cool when people are yelling at folks. So anyway, thank you for all the work that you do.
Hi, my name is Carol Stoner. I'm on Avondale Avenue. I have a couple of comments and a question. I'm not sure, maybe Dr. Priolo can get back to me. We are all here and stating our things in front of this board, but at the end of the day, if I understand this correctly, Dr. Priolo and his pandemic team are the ones who are going to be giving you the information versus the Board of Education, if I understand that correctly. So basically, we're imploring you, but at the end of the day, I believe the pandemic team is going to be who's feeding you the information ultimately to make a decision for the school district. Am I correct?
We make recommendations, yes.
Okay, so regardless of what we're saying to the Board of Education, we're really saying this to you and to the pandemic team. And I would like to know how we get in touch with the pandemic team to give our recommendations to them. We're speaking to the wrong audience.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I'm fully aware as I was sitting there, I'm not speaking to you. You have nothing really to do with it. You have everything to do with it. You and the pandemic team. So I want to know, my question is how I get in touch with them, because they're the ones I would like to talk with. And I know it's composed of nurses, I think, and some other people. That's the question I would like an answer for. I just want to say a couple of comments. Obviously, you know, I'm against masks. I'm done. We're all done. You all go to church. We all go everywhere. There are no masks. We go to parties. I'm doing a shower for my daughter. There's no masks. Okay, so school shouldn't be any different. My daughter is a speech therapist. You cannot get a speech therapist right now. They can't speak. Children can't speak. I had a kid who had special needs. He needed speech therapy, okay? They're not gonna get those services. There's not enough of them. My daughter, there's not enough. You can't speak because you can't see his person's mouth moving. That is just something that, not on just from an emotional standpoint, but just from the fact of being able to learn how to speak, it's definitely affected our little ones. I also want to make a comment with regards to what she said. The vaccines should not be tied to the mandate of whether or not there's a mask in this bill. It is not a requirement in the state of New Jersey. The last time that I checked,
I couldn't hear you.
the vaccines are not, or should not be a requirement of whether or not we wear a mask in this school district, because it is not mandated by the state of New Jersey that that vaccine has to be happen in order for people to go to school. So I want to make sure that we're all aware of the fact that it's not mandated. So at least at this point in time, so that has to be brought out separately. And I also want to say at the end of the day, masks don't do a thing.
My name is Shannon Herker on Roberts Avenue. I don't want to say much except for the fact that we're not saying that COVID is over. We're saying that it's not going to be over, that it's here to stay, and time's up on the mask because we just need to start adapting to it. So I don't want anybody to think that we just assume that COVID's over or it's all good. That's not at all what we're saying. We're fully aware that COVID's here to stay. It's not over. But masks aren't, we just got to adapt to it. That's all I want
to Just to key off of what she said, Governor Murphy dropped the general indoor mask mandate for every place else on May 28th of 2021, which is 8 months ago. 8 months ago. So I just want to know what the hypocritical nature is that we're sitting in this high school and we can walk a half a block down the street on any Friday or Saturday night, and we see people sitting in restaurants and hanging out in that beer garden place or the bar or the wine bar, and people are enjoying themselves, eating in restaurants and dining without masks, crammed shoulder to shoulder. And the bars and the casinos and the theaters and the weddings and every other place and the concert halls and every other place is packed with people, packed. And the football games and the basketball games, and these kids can see this. My kid can see it. And it's packed with people. The colleges are packed. They're partying their asses off. I know, I have college kids. Okay? And they're not wearing masks. They're not wearing masks. So I understand the sympathy of people who are panic-stricken about this, but they're not wearing masks. They're not all vaccinated. And we can see this on television. But yet our children are stuck in schools. I've seen memes on the internet that show these poor kids in school all masked, social distance with plexiglass. And yet we see these other images and we go out ourselves and see that the rest of life has moved on except in the public school system. So I believe Governor Murphy has finally realized this. The governors in the states have finally realized this. So we all have to realize this now too. So I'm all for the public health people, but we have to move on for the sake of our kids because the inconsistencies and the hypocritical nature of this is just not right. So that's all I can say.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Thank you. So, if you go to recess for 5 minutes.
I hope the midterms were worth it, sir.
I don't like getting emails at 8:40. Are we all set? Thanks, finally.
Yeah, no kidding. Because I gotta tell you one good thing, and then I almost like to make it.
No, we're in recess.
Okay, let's go on to items for Board of Education approval. Remember, it is a working session, working session. So I'm just going to read the topic. And if, give you a minute to look over the list. If you have any comments, then we can just discuss. So governance. Oh, I had something for governance. The National Clearinghouse Student Tracking Software, is that like Naviance? How is that?
So this is, Naviance is what we use for college application process. And most of the information at that point is self-reported. Clearinghouse software will track our students through their college experience. This way we can look at college graduation rates through 3, 4, 5, or 6 years. Larry did a presentation a couple of years ago that showed what happens when we go away to college, not just that we go to college. This will allow us to continue that tracking. So,
right, and so it's not self-reported.
This allows every year to then have those reports when we're watching what happens with graduates. Because most of what we have is anecdotal. We do that one snapshot, but I think that's what we want to continue, that we can track that throughout.
Real quick, does it actually share their grades? Could you compare?
It does not give grades, but it'll tell you whether they graduate, if they graduated in 2 years or 4 years, and what kind of school they went to.
Yeah, no, I'm looking. I realize that anonymity can't control what it shares or doesn't share, but I just thought I love and I'm scared of big data at the same time, but that'd be fascinating to see how well we prepare our kids for different levels of schools, but I can't do it yet.
Okay, any questions on personnel? I had another one again. For the subs, some are paid pretty drastically higher than the others. Are they certificated or long-term subs? Is that how that?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I figured. Okay, curriculum and special education. Approval of the business and finance recommendations. Okay, moving on to the minutes. Any questions about the minutes? Okay. Items for future consideration by the board.
One thing I wanted to bring up is the calendar, Chuck.
Yes.
So you thought we got to it late this year. I just want to make sure that doesn't fall off.
We're starting looking at going out to PTA meetings and such in probably March.
Can I think you said before you were going to do this, but can you maybe include in an e-blast or something, but let people know so that I hate for you to go there and only 8 people hear it. I'm a big fan of it, but I love that you're giving people time to adjust. Then I don't feel bad when somebody comes and complains a year from now about that change in their vacation.
Okay.
But I want to get it plastered out there.
I would also encourage a consideration of all aspects of the calendar. Do we keep a November break? Do we start later? I would let people think about all those moving pieces, because I think then, I'm guessing there's priorities, right? And so maybe that can help make some changes that, support all of our students.
Did we already send out a survey both to parents and to staff about the changes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it actually came back leaning towards the change, but we decided not to because it was too.
And the other thing is that the data pool that came back that we wanted to pump the brakes was not enough people understood.
I do remember you talking about that.
I wanted to be able to address that.
Yeah.
And then that way, I feel better.
Yeah, your rationale
which should help, but maybe.
Now you're reminding me of that. I remember that, because I remember being impressed.
Just because we're on it, one other thing, I know you're gonna go see the PTA things, but maybe also at back to school next September. And I know some people book it, they do book it a year in advance if you're reserving the same shore rental house, but my point is, just think about different ways of getting it out there, right? You can mention it when everybody's in the auditorium. It's hard to miss, you're hitting 800 parents at a time.
Yeah, I really think, we're trying to vote on it by the summer, right? Before summer.
Okay.
Just so they have that kind of, and 2 years out if we can, we have to check on policy.
Correct.
The other thing, as we're re-examining things, I was actually really surprised by the data. The teachers, the seniors, and I mean, I expected there to be much less support at the elementary and lower levels because that's not where the need is. It is in the older grades and especially for seniors. I was surprised that the numbers were not high, and I just wonder why.
Are you surprised by the calendar, are you not following? Okay.
Yeah.
So
When
the high school faculty was the strongest against the calendar change, which is, I would think, is counterintuitive in that they're the ones writing college letters, they're the ones who already are back, and so I was looking more of the natural change to that group. Well, I could delve into that.
Yeah,
we're also going to work with Tommy and talk to some seniors and find out what they're having just been through this, and maybe even reach out to a couple of our graduating years and say, do you think this would have been helpful? And if they all say no, we're stupid, then I'm like, oh, well, maybe I'm overthinking it too. Right? I mean, that's I think the kids' experience of that pressure of the graduation piece or the application piece would be helpful to helpful data.
And I love that you're asking them and not to just discount it if it goes against what we think might happen, but there are times I'm so impressed by what our 17 and 18-year-olds think and say, and then there are other times that they're really well-rounded, smart 17, 18-year-olds that just say something out of passion, but it really is not logically justified. So take all that into account when you collect that information.
We have a lot of high school teachers who have young parents. Because if you're in a different district, I think that's what I heard, like that would be the tension, but maybe there'd be a shift.
It's also, speaking as a high school teacher, you formerly, but your job isn't to help them get ready for college. That's your guidance counselor, that's your, the responsibility, a lot of it falls onto the students at that age. It's not as much, so the teachers might not notice some of the issues we're trying to rectify might not be an issue the teachers address as much in the class.
But the AP teachers, it would impact.
Yes, but I also think we have really, what Chuck was saying too, was that even looking at the data, it doesn't reflect the amount of pressure students put on themselves in terms of preparing on their own and outside of class versus they wouldn't need to do that if they had the time. So
the thing is, people only know what they know, and I think, and even though there's whole studies about, painful things create stronger memories than happy things, but my point is, people generally tend to like what they've experienced, and they want their kids to experience. Not that the 18-year-olds are thinking of that, but they only know what they know, so they're like, yeah, it was fine. It's a human tendency to think that way because they can't really envision. I don't want to give up my long weekend at the shore on Labor Day, and they just, it wasn't that bad in hindsight. I was stressed, but it wasn't that bad. They don't know what they don't know.
And there's one other thing that Rachel mentioned, and frankly, I had not considered this earlier on. For our teachers, for teachers that teach in this district and have kids outside of this district, or the flip side, parents who are teachers in another district and have kids in this district, they actually do lose 4 weeks because there are 2 weeks on either side where it's not synchronized, and where we're not doing this about vacations. This is not the reason to set a school calendar. It's not about vacations. It's about what's right for the school, what's good for the school. my concern is, do we risk losing any good teachers as a result? I don't know what that answer is, but it's something that should at least be considered.
And it's not even about risking losing them. I don't want to be the type of district that makes it hard. Like, I mean, hard might be an under, like, I don't want to be like, we don't care what you think, even though you're 20 or 10% of our population. But I know that Chuck, you had mentioned that you might bring it up at some of your superintendent roundtables. I think maybe other districts may not be as forward thinking, or they may not want to buck the status quo as much, but if you talk that up a lot, I think about the time I've spent on the board, and my youngest is a freshman, so there's an end in sight for how long I'm going to stay on the board. And I say this because if I think about everything we've done throughout the years, whether a referendum passes or not, which is super important, but eventually the bricks fall down and eventually the public pays, because you gotta have the bricks up. My point is, what could you do that would really make a long-term impact on students learning more? And I do believe that this calendar, out of everything we've done in 11 years, you might say, Heather, I can't believe you're focusing on that, but so many things are, let's call it something different, and it just is the same thing, and we circle around every 3 years, and this would make a big difference. And so I'm not looking to anger people, but it would be great if there was a way to make it an even bigger win, because people understood it and it didn't inconvenience our staff. And it's not going to be positive for everybody, but if we can mitigate the people that it would be negative for, this could be a hugely impactful thing to our students' learning.
I agree.
Okay, anything else? All right, motion to close. Greg, Linda,